The conference hall had been dressed to intimidate, all glass and steel and lights that made everyone feel slightly exposed, and Mara knew exactly how to use that kind of room because she had spent years mastering how power sounded when it echoed. She stood near the front with a microphone she didn't need, speaking about excellence and optics, about how the company's image mattered in every detail, and when her gaze landed on the janitor by the side door, it sharpened into something cruelly amused. He was tall but slightly stooped, shoulders worn down not by age but by repetition, a mop in his hand and a cart beside him with a squeaky wheel he kept meaning to fix. His uniform was clean but faded, his boots scuffed, and a frayed backpack leaned against the wall, the kind with cartoon patches sewn on by a small, careful hand. Mara paused her presentation and smiled, a smile that suggested she was about to teach a lesson. "This," she said, gesturing openly toward him, "is exactly what I mean. Standards. We have investors here, partners from out of state, and yet we allow distractions." A ripple of laughter moved through the room, light and thoughtless. The janitor stopped mopping. He didn't look embarrassed so much as tired, the particular fatigue of someone who has learned that dignity often means swallowing words. He glanced at his watch, calculating how late he already was, thinking of his daughter waiting at aftercare with a book she pretended not to read. Mara asked security why he was even there, why people who weren't part of the conversation were allowed to linger during executive sessions. Phones came out, screens glowing with the promise of humiliation turned into content. Someone suggested he be escorted out, and Mara nodded as if that were generous. When security asked for his name and badge, he straightened instinctively, a posture that didn't quite fit the mop in his hands. "Elias Ward," he said quietly, then added, "because old habits die hard, Staff Sergeant, retired." A scoff rose from somewhere near the front. Mara waved it away, joking that everyone had a story, that she meant his employee badge, not his war movie credits. Elias reached into his pocket, fingers brushing a coin he carried without thinking, and handed over the badge. The room buzzed again, bored and satisfied, ready to move on. Then, from the back, a man who had been silent the entire morning stiffened as if a wire had been pulled tight inside him. He stared at Elias with an intensity that didn't belong in boardrooms and whispered, "Not quite to anyone, what?" The whisper traveled, tugging at something old in the air. Elias looked up, confused. The man swallowed hard and asked, louder now, "What was your call sign?" The janitor hesitated, feeling the past rise like a wave he usually kept at bay, then answered simply, "Ravenfall." Art 2. The effect was immediate and physical, like the room itself had taken a breath and forgotten how to let it out. Conversations died mid-syllable. A pen clattered to the floor and no one bent to pick it up. The man in the back pushed his chair away so fast it scraped loudly, then stood and did something that didn't belong among tailored suits and polished shoes. He came to attention, hand lifting in a salute that shook despite his effort to control it. "Ravenfall pulled us out of a kill zone outside Kandahar," he said, voice tight, eyes shining. "I was 22. I shouldn't be here." Another person stood, then another, faces pale as recognition stacked upon recognition, fragments of memory colliding, night operations, radios crackling, a calm voice cutting through chaos, a figure moving back into fire when everyone else was moving away. Someone whispered that Ravenfall had stayed behind to hold a line so civilians could escape. Someone else said Ravenfall had carried 2 wounded men at once. The security team lowered their radios, suddenly unsure who they were supposed to be protecting. Mara's smile faltered, then fractured completely as the story she had tried to write slipped from her control. The phones that had been recording slowly tilted downward, shame creeping in as people realized what they had been eager to capture. Elias felt the attention pressing in on him and hated it, not because the stories were untrue, but because they belonged to a life he had folded away to make room for lunchboxes and spelling tests and night shifts. The chair of the board cleared his throat, his polished confidence replaced by something human, and apologized not with corporate language, but with a raw, halting sincerity that acknowledged harm. He offered Elias a seat at the table, a symbolic correction that felt too small and too late. Elias shook his head gently and said he still had floors to finish, because routine was a kindness he could give himself. As he returned to his mop, the room moved around him differently now, people stepping aside as if making space for something sacred. Someone quietly pledged a scholarship in his daughter's school district. Another promised to review company policies about respect and visibility. None of it mattered as much as the small thing that did. When Elias checked his watch again, the aftercare fee had stopped ticking up, because the board chair had already called to say she'd wait with his daughter until he arrived. Elias pushed his cart toward the door, the squeaky wheel finally ignored, leaving behind a room that had learned, too late but not too late, that a single name spoken aloud could rearrange everything.